days 15 to 30, here's what we add. So again, we had some rules we were following in that first 2 weeks, and the second 2 weeks, we're adding a few more things. We're crossing a few more things off the list, okay? And one of the families that we're crossing out off the list are nightshades. Now, nightshades contain components called lectins and solenoids. These are compounds found commonly in the vegetables and fruits that are nightshades that increase inflammation, right? So they can overstimulate the immune system, and if you're already inflamed, it's just like putting more wood on the fire. You're adding more to the fire. Same thing with legumes, including peanuts. So what are legumes? It's beans. We mentioned soy in the first 15 days, but we're adding in the other beans in the second 15 days. So that would include kidney beans, pinto beans, lima beans, and any other bean that you can think of. And remember, peanuts are legumes, so we're cutting those out as well. We're also discontinuing certain nuts and seeds. Now, not all nuts and seeds, but some of the main ones that we are concerned with in terms of nuts and seeds are concerned. The biggest one here is cashew. Cashew is actually a seed. It's oftentimes called a nut, and people get confused, but it's actually cashews on the no list in terms of the no grain, no pain diet plan. We're also going to cut out all processed sugar. Again, there can be no processed sugar. There's a golden rule in nutrition, that is you can't get healthy eating food that's not healthy. So sugar's not good for you. Processed sugar's not good for you. We're cutting out pretty much most sugar substitutes. Now, we're cutting out all artificial sweeteners, as I said before, but some things that are okay on this: stevia, if you tolerate stevia, okay. There's also xylitol is one of my favorite, as long as it's derived from birchwood. Some xylitol is made out of corn. You want to look for birchwood xylitol, not corn-derived xylitol. Monk fruit, if you tolerate it well, can also be okay. So those are some exceptions there. We're going to avoid tobacco. Obviously, tobacco is not good for you anyway, but tobacco is highly inflammatory and stimulates a part of your nervous system and your immune system that will drive the process indefinitely. We're also going to avoid coffee and black tea, in part because of the caffeine. Now, some of you, I know what you're already thinking. What about caffeine-free? The answer is no caffeine. Remember, caffeine-free means 3% caffeinated, so it still has caffeine. We still want to cut it out. But there are other reasons why we're cutting out coffee and black tea, and some of it has to do with the level of mold and mycotoxins in coffee and black tea. Some of it has to do with the fact that if you're in a bad way, the caffeinated aspect of this beverage will overstimulate your sympathetic nervous system and make it hard for you to repair and recover. But there are also chemicals found in coffee and tea in some cases that can mimic gluten, and this is why we're cutting them out as kind of the final rule of why we actually cut them out in that phase 2. So again, this is days 15 to 30, phase 2 of the diet. So this is the add-on. So again, phase 1 is a little easier than phase 2, but that's what phase 1 is for. It's kind of an introductory phase. It's supposed to be a little bit easier so that when you get to phase 2, it's not quite as challenging. So that's the diet change that we pursue. Now, there are other elements to no grain, no pain besides that diet change that we pursue. So that's what I just defined to you was basically the clean eating component. But then there's also other pieces of this puzzle that you want to make sure that you're implementing if you want your strategy to work the best. So like if you want to make the most out of this next 30 days, what is that? Number one, it's spending time outside. And there are a lot of benefits and reasons why we want to do this. Number one, we spend time outside to connect with the earth, to connect with the electromagnetic field of the planet. There's a lot of healing energy in that. So if you've ever heard of the term grounding, when people do grounding, they're actually connecting with the electromagnetic frequency of the earth, and there's a lot of healing property to that. So you want to spend time outside. Again, it's winter right now, so it's a little bit more challenging. You can't go out and sunbathe per se, but depending on where you live. But spend time outside nonetheless. You're also going to get fresh air when you go outside. You're also going to get some sun exposure, weather permitting, when you go outside and spend time outdoors. There are also plenty of, especially if you spend time outdoors, not like out time in the city outdoors, but go to a park where there's trees and flowers and other things about, because there are a number of different aromas and scents that you're going to pick up when you're out in nature that are actually beneficial to your limbic system and beneficial to your immune system. We want to maximize your sleep. This is an area a lot of people neglect in a big way, but your sleeping time frame, you should be in bed and asleep by 10 p.m. That's kind of the bare bones minimum. You should be asleep at least until 2 a.m. Now, that's just a 4-hour window. We obviously want to sleep longer than 4 hours every night, but this is the critical window when your body resets your cortisol and resets your hormonal rhythm. So you want to maximize this by being asleep during this 4-hour window, preferably, go to bed earlier than 10 p.m. I'd say, I like to get in bed by 8:30, but 9 o'clock is good to shoot for, and then waking up somewhere around 5 or 6 is good as well. So again, a.m., that way you get a full 8 or more hours of sleep, but you get that critical 4 hours for healing and restorative functions. We also want to exercise. Now, the key to exercise is tolerance. Some of you are at different levels of physical fitness. Some of you are hurting. Some of you are anemic. Some of you have nutritional deficits. And so when you try to exercise, you pay a price for 3 or 4 days where you're down in bed. That's why the key term here is tolerance. If you can't do weightlifting right now, for you, exercise might be walking a half a mile because you've been sedentary, right? For you, exercise might be walking 2 miles. For somebody else, exercise might be doing, high-intensity interval training. I talk a lot about different patterns of exercise and no grain, no pain, but the key is you need to start being more physical. You have to tell your body that you need it so that it responds by growing and building new muscle and driving blood vessel supply and nutrient supply to different tissues that you've stopped using, especially if you're sedentary. And again, take it at your pace, but you need to make sure that you're taking a pace. A lot of people just say, I'll get to this after I've done the diet. No, try to do them simultaneously. You'll get better outcomes. And then this fourth block is avoid chemicals. And so we talked about a lot of the things that you want to avoid anyway, like the artificial sweeteners and chemical food labels, right? Food labels that have a bunch of chemicals on them as preservatives. But also do your best to avoid chemicals that are found ambiently in your water. So you need to be filtering your water the best that you can. My advice is reverse osmosis if you live in a city. If you're on a well or you have well water, get it tested. But a good filter for well water is granular activated carbon. And then if you, if that's filtering the chemical potential from your water, but also filter your air at home. And the best type of filter to filter your air at home is an ultrafine HEPA filter so that you can minimize your exposure to chemicals that are being emitted from carpets and paints and fabrics and furnitures and other things. So again, these strategies all need to be in place simultaneously to get the most out of the program. As far as supplemental support, the big question I get, what are the things that I should take if I'm going to take supplements and try to help myself through this? Aside from doing a vitamin C flush, are there other things you can do? These are my top 4, right? If you're just going to keep it at a minimalistic avenue, these are my top 4. This one here, number 1, is Biotic Defense, and this is a probiotic. And the reason why I recommend this is because we know that gluten damages your microbiome, right? So gluten knocks out your microbiome. If you're new to this, we want to get some good probiotic in you to start supporting the recovery of your microbiome. We also know that gluten causes malnutrition of vitamins and minerals, right? So we want a good multivitamin, multimineral to start recovering our nutrition. And again, if you're eating well too, your food is going to do a big part of this, but this is just support in that. Gluten Shield. This is because most people that go gluten-free initially, they make mistakes, right? So we're trying to reduce your risk of cross-contamination damage. And so that's what Gluten Shield is designed to do. But it also contains full-spectrum enzymes. So it's also designed to help you digest and break your food down so that you get what? More nutrients from the food that you eat, right? So one of the side effects of gluten exposure over years is pancreatic damage. Remember, your pancreas produces digestive enzymes that help you break your food down. We see a lot of people in my practice that have enzyme pancreatic insufficiency. They're not generating enzymes because gluten has damaged that organ. So again, the nutrients will help. The Gluten Shield will help as a full enzyme formula as well. And then the last thing, again, if we're talking about basics, is omega-3, and this is omega max. So omega-3 is is critical. It's an essential fat, and I would venture to say, if I calculated this out, 90% plus of all people I've ever tested over the last 20 plus years in practice have been deficient in omega-3 fat. So you don't get, unless you're just eating tons of fish, and a lot of people are cautious around fish because they're worried about mercury and the Fukushima radiation damage that hit the oceans from Japan. So they're nervous around fish, and so they're not getting their fish. So they're not getting adequate omega-3. It's hard to get enough omega-3 in the diet if you don't eat a lot of fish. Even if you're eating grass-fed beef, it's still hard to get enough omega-3. And if you're on a vegetarian diet or a vegan diet, it's almost impossible to get adequate quantities of omega-3, even from plant-based sources like chia or flax. So again, omega is one of those I recommend because so many people that I've seen in my practice are largely deficient, and you can't repair and overcome inflammation if you don't have an adequate omega-3, omega-6 balance. So very, very critical. That's why these make that top 4 list of things that I would recommend that you do. Hey, don't forget to check out the rest of the series right here. Make sure you hit subscribe below. And as always, thanks for tuning in.